Hey students, Mrs. Dukoski here. Just for a quick chapter 7 Catcher in the Rye lesson. So we're going to do chapter 7. It is Holden's last, moments at Pensy Prep. We know his central conflict is that he's getting kicked out of Pensy. He's failing. It's right before winter break. It's a Saturday, so it's been Saturday really during this whole time except that very first page when he discloses that this whole story is going to be a flashback about this time that he ran into some trouble. So the whole story that he's telling us really is going to take place over the course of one long weekend. So this is like part 1, I would call it, where Holden is leaving Pensy. We know he's getting kicked out. It's Saturday and he's, had a long day. He's in the dorms. He's about to go talk to Ackley again. And we saw him in chapter 6 have a conflict with Strad Later. So that will be our continued focus in chapter 7, the element of conflict. So we go from chapter 6 where he has this external conflict, this person versus person with Strad Later. And now Strad Later is not in this chapter. Holden has left his room. He's not with Strad Later. The conflict between Strad Later and he physically has ended, but he's holding on to it. So this is more how now Holden's internalizing the conflict and letting it, kind of weigh on him. And we'll talk about that. He's going to disclose a little bit more about Jane Gallagher and why he was so upset. He's hinted at it, that she was out with Strad Later, and why that even provoked Holden to get into this fight with Strad Later. So we'll find out more in chapter 7. Before we begin chapter 7 though, just a quick be now. And so I'm going to leave this one for you. I love doing just these mini breaks all throughout my day. So I offer them to you, and I think they're so important, and I think self-care is so important too. And, we really can't take good care of anyone else if we're not taking good care of ourselves. So take those moments to notice when you need to pause. Often I like to do it before I start a new activity. So maybe a new lesson or, transitioning from one part of your day to the next. And it really doesn't have to be long. It could just be a couple minutes where you pause and take notice of yourself, how you're doing, your well-being. Take those breaths. The longer our breath, the longer our life. That's a proverb, right? So we have this ability to connect to our breath at all times. So we'll start there today, and we'll just kind of notice our breath. I like to put a hand on my heart and a hand on my belly. So you can't really see my belly, but hand on heart, hand on belly. And then we just engage in our breath, and we start to notice it. And you want to breathe deeply through your nose. So if you notice you're breathing through your mouth, that's number 1, is start to breathe through your nose. Nice deep breath, and exhale through your nose too, slowly, slow, like you're letting air slowly out of a balloon. Just noticing your breath. Now we're going to kind of notice our posture as we breathe. As we inhale, we're going to notice first our belly should swell out. So again, the belly swells out and the chest puffs up, and then you can almost feel the breath into the back of your throat. And then you can pause at the very top of your breath before you begin that exhale out. And then it's kind of the reverse where you exhale and the air, leaves your throat, your chest, and your belly even draws back and in. You can feel it engaging. So we'll start and just noticing how that breath is really encompassing this whole upper part of your body all the way from your belly. And it's funny, we have breath, but we never quite notice how big our breath can be. So let's take notice of that. So we'll inhale again, belly puffs up, chest rises, you feel it in the back of your throat, and then we pause at the top, and then we slowly exhale out our nose, the chest lowers, the belly draws back and in. Get that last, all the air out. Don't keep any stale air in. And you feel your belly almost engage at the bottom. And then we'll take another round on our own. I invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Exhale all the air out. And we'll drop our hands by our side. You can either let them fall in your lap. You can stand if you would like. I am sitting. Let your hands fall either in your lap, on your knees, or just they can drop by the side of you. And then we're going to inhale our shoulders up and roll them back. On the exhale, Inhale them up, exhale, roll them back. We'll take our left ear, tip it to our left shoulder. Take the neck back unless you have discomfort in your neck that prevents you from doing this. Just listen to your own body. Right ear rolls to right shoulder. And then we'll take our head or chin all the way to the chest. And we'll do that another time in this direction. Inhaling back and around. Exhaling down. And then we'll come back to center. And we'll go in the reverse direction. So we'll start right. And then we'll go back over to the left. Chin down. Inhale right. Go back. Exhale all the way, chin down. And here I just invite you to take your hands just gently. We're not tugging. We're just kind of gently clasping, putting them behind our head. And we're not going to pull. We're just simply going to let gravity do work by taking our elbows and pointing them down and letting our chin tip toward our chest. And we can just kind of rock our head no and let it roll around. If there's any tight spots, feel free to pause and take a big breath there. Just releasing tension. It builds in our neck and across our back and through our shoulders, especially as we do work at our computers. And again, feel free to do all of this standing if you just need to stand. I appreciate that entirely. We'll just lift our heads, we'll open our eyes if they were closed, and we'll say thank you for that be now, right? So here we are, kind of like felt our way into the moment. And just like being aware of your body and feeling like its presence and doing some of these exercises helps us, our brain, to kind of get that energy going. So the oxygen starts flowing. We're able to like awaken a little bit and be more available for learning, right? So we've, taking those fresh breaths, and feel free always to go outside and take a few breaths too. The air is extra invigorating in the outdoors, especially if you've been cooped up inside and you feel like you just need to get out. So go out, take a couple quick breaths of air and see all the benefits that can give you. All right, so with that, I'm gonna start my screen share, chapter 7, Catcher in the Rye, and we'll get on with this. All right. Here we go. I'm just gonna pop into Schoology quickly, show you the chapter 7 notes. This is a quick one. Nothing too fancy, just continuing some conflict from chapter 6 before we move our way to New York City, where things really start to get interesting. So we've got our Be Now under wraps. We've got a chapter 7 lesson. I'll also put in a chapter 6 review. I'll put it in the description and I'll add it to these notes. So feel free to get up here. Get in and do your chapter 6 review. Again, I'll put it in here and in the description if you need to. That was the chapter where Holden and Strad Later got into that conflict. So we move on. We'll have Holden going to visit Ackley. We'll pay attention again. If we see that red hat that Holden's wearing, the hunting hat, we know it's a symbol. Always pay attention and notice what's going on for Holden when he has his hat. He likes to move it around. He likes to talk about his feelings when he's wearing his hat. So that's, a symbol for us in this story. And then we're going to dig into some of these themes. So essential themes that we're uncovering. As the story unfolds, we learn a little bit more. The isolation, right? Holden is not yet alone physically. He's been with other people, but he's feeling isolated because of his situation. Alienation too. We saw that right from the beginning, that first chapter where he's alone at the football game. He's feeling alienated. We know he's feeling lonely. We're going to get deeper into things like depression and the difficulties of just being his age, being an adolescent or a teenager. This whole idea of phoniness, people being fake, especially in the adult world, as he encounters people either trying to act like adults or adults themselves. Corruption, injustice, privilege. He's a boy at this privileged prep school. And yet, right, with all of what you would think would be a privilege, right, an entitlement to go to these elite schools and get these top, educations, he is struggling, all right? He is struggling at as much as, we might be in times in our life. He's lonely, he's depressed, he's having difficulties. So he's having all of these very human feelings and conflicts going on. the whole idea of conformity, that's, forcing yourself to feel like you're fitting in, and society kind of encouraging certain paths for you to follow. We already saw that with Mr. Spencer, right? And even Strad later mentions it to Holden, like, why can't you just follow the rules, right? And then, of course, the rebellion, that he doesn't want to follow this path that's being laid out for him. And so all of that is emerging, and we'll continue to work with that as we read Holden's story. All right, so getting into my chapter, I've got it up here. This chapter 7, I believe starts on page 26. Let me get back. So if you go in, I'm just going to scroll. Oh no, bottom of 25. You can always pop in here again, the PDF, type in 25, press enter, and it's going to take you directly to this page. And 7, the chapter 7 marker is toward the bottom of page 25. So here we go. I'm going to pop my headphones on. I think it's a little bit clearer. Chapter 7. Catcher in the Rye. A tiny bit of light came through the shower curtains and all from our room, and I could see him lying in bed. I knew damn well he was wide awake. Ackley, I said, you awake? Yeah. It was pretty dark, and I stepped on somebody's shoe on the floor and damn near fell on my head. Ackley sort of sat up in bed and leaned on his arm. He had a lot of white stuff on his face, first pimples. He looked sort of spooky in the dark. What the hell you doing anyway? I said. What do you mean, what the hell am I doing? I was trying to sleep before you guys started making all that noise. What the hell was the fight about anyhow? Where's the light? I couldn't find the light. I was sliding my hand all over the wall. What do you want the light for? Right next to your hand. I finally found the switch and turned it on. Old Ackley put his hand up so the light wouldn't hurt his eyes. Jesus, he said. What the hell happened to you? He meant all the blood and all. I had a little goddamn tiff with Strad Later, I said. Then I sat down on the floor. They never had any chairs in their room. I don't know what the hell they did with their chairs. Listen, I said, do you feel like playing a little canasta? He was a canasta fiend. You're still bleeding, for Christ's sakes. You better put something on it. It'll stop. Listen, you want to play a little canasta or don't you? Canasta, for Christ's sakes. Do you know what time it is by any chance? It isn't late. It's only around 11:30. Only around, Ackley said. Listen, I got to get up and go to mass in the morning, for Christ's sakes. You guys start hollering and fighting in the middle of the goddamn... What the hell was that fight about anyhow? It's a long story. I don't want to bore you, Ackley. I'm thinking of your welfare. I told him. I never discussed my personal life with him. In the first place, he was even more stupid than Strad Later. Strad Later was a goddamn genius next to Ackley. Hey, I said, is it okay if I sleep in Eli's bed tonight? He won't be back till tomorrow night, will he? I knew damn well he wouldn't. Eli went home damn near every weekend. I don't know when the hell he's coming back, Ackley said. Boy, did that annoy me. What the hell do you mean you don't know when he's coming back? He never comes back till Sunday night, does he? No, but for Christ's sakes, I can't just tell somebody they can sleep in his goddamn bed if they want to. That killed me. I reached up from where I was sitting on the floor and patted him on the goddamn shoulder. You're a prince, Ackley kid, I said. You know that? No, I mean it. I can't just tell somebody they can sleep in. You're a real prince. You're a gentleman and a scholar, I said. He really was, too. Do you happen to have any cigarettes by any chance? Say no or I'll drop dead. No, I don't. As a matter of fact, listen, what the hell was the fight about? I didn't answer him. All I did was I got up and went over and looked out the window. I felt so lonesome all of a sudden. I almost wished I was dead. What the hell was the fight about anyhow? Ackley said, for about the 50th time. He certainly was a bore about that. About you, I said. About me, for Christ's sakes. Yeah, I was defending your goddamn honor. Strad Later said you had a lousy personality. I couldn't let him get away with that stuff. That got him excited. He did? No kidding. He did? I told him I was only kidding, and then I went over and laid down on Eli's bed. Boy, did I feel rotten. I felt so damn lonesome. This room stinks, I said. I can smell your socks from way over here. Don't you ever send them to the laundry? If you don't like it, you know what you can do, Ackley said. What a witty guy. How about turning off the goddamn light? I didn't turn it off right away, though. I just kept laying there on Eli's bed, thinking about Jane and all. It just drove me stark, staring mad when I thought about her and Strad Later parked somewhere in that fat-ass Ed Banky's car. Every time I thought about it, I felt like jumping out the window. The thing is, you didn't know Strad Later. I knew him. Most guys at Pensy just talked about having sexual intercourse with girls all the time, like Ackley, for instance. But old Strad Later, he really did it. I was personally acquainted with at least 2 girls he gave the time to. That's the truth. Tell me the story of your fascinating life, Ackley kid, I said. How about turning off the goddamn light? I gotta get up for mass in the morning. I got up and turned it off, if it made him happy. Then I laid down on Eli's bed again. What are you gonna do, sleep in Eli's bed? Ackley said. He was the perfect host. I may not. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. Only I'd hate like hell if Eli came in all of a sudden and found some guy. Relax, I'm not gonna sleep here. I wouldn't abuse your goddamn hospitality. A couple of minutes later, he was snoring like mad. I kept laying there in the dark anyway, though, trying not to think about old Jane and Stradlater and goddamn Ed Banky's car. But it was almost impossible. The trouble was, I knew that guy Stradlater's technique. That made it even worse. We once double dated in Ed Banky's car, and Stradlater was in the back with his date, and I was in the front with mine. What a technique that guy had. What he'd do was he'd start snowing his date in this very quiet, sincere voice, like as if he wasn't only a very handsome guy, but a nice, sincere guy too. I damn near puked listening to him. His date kept saying, no, please, please don't, please. But old Stradlater kept snowing her in this Abraham Lincoln sincere voice, and finally there'd be this terrific silence in the back of the car. It was really embarrassing. I don't think he gave the girl the time that night, but damn near, damn near. While I was laying there trying not to think, I heard old Stradlater come back from the can and go into our room. You could hear him putting away his crummy toilet articles and all, and opening the window. He was a fresh air fiend. Then a little while later, he turned off the light. He didn't even look around to see where I was at. It was even depressing out in the street. You couldn't even hear any cars anymore. I got feeling so lonesome and rotten, I even felt like waking Ackley up. Hey, Ackley, I said, in sort of a whisper, so Stradlater couldn't hear me through the shower curtain. Ackley, didn't you hear me? Ackley didn't hear me, though. Hey, Ackley. I still didn't hear me. He still didn't hear me. He slept like a rock. Hey, Ackley! He heard that all right. What the hell's the matter with you? He said. I was asleep, for Christ's sakes. Listen, what's the routine on joining a monastery? I asked him. I was sort of toying with the idea of joining one. Do you have to be Catholic and all? Certainly, you have to be Catholic. You bastard. Did you wake me up just to ask me a dumb question? Go back to sleep. I'm not going to join one anyway. The kind of luck I have, I'd probably join one with all the wrong monks in it. All stupid bastards, or just bastards. When I said that, old Ackley sat way the hell up in bed. Listen, he said, I don't care what you say about me or anything, but if you start making cracks about my goddamn religion, for Christ's sakes, relax, I said. Nobody's making any cracks about your goddamn religion. I got up off Eli's bed and started toward the door. I didn't want to hang around in that stupid atmosphere anymore. I stopped on the way, though, and picked up Ackley's hand and gave him a big, phony handshake. He pulled it away from me. What's the idea, he said. No idea. I just want to thank you for being such a goddamn prince, that's all. I said it in this very sincere voice, too. You're aces, Ackley kid, I said. You know that? Wise guy. Somebody, someday's gonna bash your... I didn't even bother to listen to him. I shut the damn door and went out in the corridor. Everybody was asleep or out or home for the weekend, and it was very, very quiet and depressing in the corridor. There was empty box of Koilnos toothpaste outside Leahy and Hoffman's door, and while I walked down toward the stairs, I kept giving it a boot with his sheep-lined slipper I had on. What I thought I'd do, I thought I might go down and see what old Mal Broussard was doing, but all of a sudden I changed my mind. All of a sudden, I decided I'd get the hell out of Pensy. Right the same night and all. I mean, not wait till Wednesday or anything. I just didn't want to hang around anymore. It made me too sad and lonesome. So what I decided to do, I'd take a room in a hotel in New York, some very inexpensive hotel and all, and just take it easy till Wednesday. Then on Wednesday, I'd go home all rested up and feeling swell. I figured my parents probably wouldn't get old Thermer's letter saying I'd been given the axe till maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I didn't want to go home or anything till they got it and thoroughly digested it and all. I didn't want to be around when they first got it. My mother gets very hysterical. She's not too bad after she gets something thoroughly digested, though. Besides, I sort of needed a little vacation. My nerves were shot. They really were. Anyway, that's what I decided I'd do. So I went back to the room and turned on the light to start packing and all. I already had quite a few things packed. Old Strad Later didn't even wake up. I lit a cigarette and got all dressed, and then I packed these 2 Gladstones I have. Those are suitcases. It only took me about 2 minutes. I'm a very rapid packer. One thing about packing depressed me a little. I had to pack these brand new ice skates my mother had practically just sent me a couple of days before. That depressed me. I could see my mother going into Spalding's and asking the salesman a million dopey questions, and here I was getting the axe again. It made me feel pretty sad. She bought me the wrong kind of skates. I wanted racing skates, and she bought hockey, but it made me sad anyway. Almost every time somebody gives me a present, it ends up making me sad. After I got all packed, I started counting my dough. I don't remember exactly how much I had, but I was pretty loaded. My grandmother just sent me a wad about a week before. I have this grandmother that's quite lavish with her dough. She doesn't have all her marbles anymore. She's old as hell. She keeps sending me money for my birthday about 4 times a year. Anyway, even though I was pretty loaded, I figured I could always use a few extra bucks. You never know. So what I did, I went down the hall and woke up Frederick Woodruff, this guy I'd lent my typewriter to. I asked him how much he'd give me for it. He was a pretty wealthy guy. He said he didn't know. He said he didn't much want to buy it. Finally, he bought it, though. It cost about 90 bucks and all, and he bought it, and all he bought it for was 20. He was sore because I'd woke him up. When I was all set to go, when I had my bags and all, I stood for a while next to the stairs and took a last look down the goddamn corridor. I was sort of crying. I don't know why. I put my red hunting hat on and turned the peak around to the back, the way I liked it. And then I yelled at the top of my goddamn voice, "Sleep tight, you morons." I'll bet I woke up every bastard on the whole floor. Then I got the hell out. Some stupid guy had thrown peanut shells all over the stairs, and I damn near broke my crazy neck. End of chapter 7. Whew. All right, so that's it. Holden's leaving Pensy. Chapter 8, he will be gone. All right, so he's getting out of Pensy. And if you just kind of looking even at this chapter, I mean, and we know things haven't been going well for him in the first 6 chapters, but he says he's depressed. He even at one point says he kind of felt like killing himself. He probably is making a good decision to get out. It's not going well for him. He doesn't have support. He doesn't really have friends who are there to, help him through this. He's on his own. So he's doing, what I think is probably the best choice for him in this moment, which is moving on. He's, letting it go, and he's, the writing's on the wall. He's going to move forward. So he's not going to wait another minute, even though it's late Saturday and he just got in this fight and it probably would benefit him to get a little bit of sleep. He's getting out of there. So this is Saturday night still, later in the night. He's going to leave Pensy. With that, before we, say goodbye for chapter 7 lesson, I want to talk about how the conflict between Strad Later and Holden from chapter 6 continues into this chapter. Even though Strad Later is not physically in this chapter, we hear, or Holden describes for us in this stream of consciousness, in this first person narration, why he's upset. He explains a little bit more about what's going on in his head that would provoke him to get into an altercation with Strad Later, and it has everything to do with Jane. So he says it drove him stark staring mad when I thought about Jane and Strad Later, right, parked somewhere in Ed Banky, fat ass Ed Banky's car. So this is what's triggering Holden, right? This has got him in his feelings. Maybe I'll have to put a link to that song in our description, because that's fun. So he's in his feelings here, right? Holden's in his feelings. He's upset. Strad Later's with Jane in Ed Banky's car, and we find out a little bit more, and this is where I want to pause and analyze what happens in Ed Banky's car, because Holden's double dated with Strad Later in this car, and he says he knows Strad Later's technique, all right, which is making it worse, right? This whole page 27. We once double dated in Ed Banky's car, and Strad Later was in the back with his date, and I was in the front with mine. What a technique that guy had. Let's talk about technique. J.D. Salinger, this is 1950. I'm getting all fired up here. Actually, I'll stop my share for a second so you can see me. I'm getting all fired up. Sir J.D. Salinger, this is 1950. He uses the word technique to describe what Holden says he has heard and seen Strad Later do in the back of Ed Banky's car. So I would say that that word technique today, right, would probably be considered something else. So harassment, assault, depending on what happens, and he doesn't exactly know what happens, even date rape. All right, so we should talk about that because that's important. And what may be passed for a technique in 1950, this isn't cool. This isn't gonna fly. Like, these types of conversations need to happen. And if something like that is what you're seeing or hearing or experiencing, you need to understand that's not technique. That becomes harassment if it's just verbal, right? Assault if it's physical, but doesn't exceed certain levels of physicality. And there's definitions. I'll post a link for you so you can kind of do a little more research on your own. And even rape, all right? So this is what's happening here. This is important stuff to know about. And Holden, this is why he's upset. This is why he's in his feelings about Jane. He's like, I know. I've seen this guy Strad Later. His technique is possibly rape, right? That's not a technique, right? That is like a serious, serious problem. All right. So and we'll look at it again. Let me go back in. He is upset and worried for good reason. And he says here, we double dated once, and what he's doing, he's snowing his date, which is just kind of talking to her in, a way where he's trying to seduce her, I guess would be a good word. And he's trying to pretend he's sincere and quiet, and Holden knows that he's anything but, because he knows him well, and that he's not only handsome, but really nice, sincere guy too. And it's almost making Holden puke. And then this is the, like, let's talk about this. The date says, no, please don't, please. But Strad Later kept snowing her in this Abraham Lincoln sincere voice, and finally there'd be this terrific silence in the back of the car. It was really embarrassing. I don't think he gave the girl the time that night, but damn near. So he's like, I'm laying there. While he's laying there, trying not to think about it, he hears Strad Later in the other room. This is a problem. You can see me again. This is a problem. Strad Later's a creep. I think I can say this, he's a D-bag, right? So he's this guy that is taking advantage of girls, harassing them possibly. They're telling him no. Holden hears this. He's seen it. It makes him super uncomfortable, and it even causes him to get into this fight with Strad Later because he's not sure if that's what happened with his friend who he cares about very much, Jane Gallagher. And he knows that Strad Later has the potential to do that, and he's even like heard it and seen it. So this is really, really, suspicious territory that Holden is leading us into about this character Strad Later. Strad Later is not a good guy, even if he's pretending to be a good guy. And then when Holden, and it shows us about Holden too, that Holden has this moral compass, right? A moral compass is like how you center yourself based on your principles and your morality. And even though Holden has all of these struggles, and he's getting kicked out of school, and he's flunking, and he smokes a ton of cigarettes, and curses all the time, he's definitely human, right? He's our tragic hero. He has a moral compass, and this is an example of him displaying it. So he has this empathy, this concern, this compassion, and that's a beautiful thing, I think, about Holden, that he truly, truly cares about people, especially the people that he's closest to. So we'll see that. His brother Ali, he's already mentioned, Jane he's already mentioned. There are a few people in his life that, you know, he would do anything for, and Jane in this chapter, he, you know, dives into why it was that he got into that altercation, physical altercation with Strad Later. He's sticking up for her because he knows that Strad Later is a jerk and possibly even, you know, could have harassed Jane, assaulted her, and hopefully didn't do anything more than that. But that's some serious stuff. And I'll post some things in our description in our lesson if you want to read a little bit more about the different nuances and the language of those you know, assault, harassment, and rape. These are important topics we should all know about. All right, so with that, chapter 7's over. Holden's leaving Pensy. We'll be back more for chapter 8, and I hope you're all doing well out there. Okay, bye.